In this demo, we'll learn how to set up environments for SQL. There are several ways of actually getting to the point where you can write some code and write some SQL queries, create some tables, and so on. This is not a database course, so I won't be going into a lot of detail here and be going very fast and show just a few environments very quickly how to set up and get you up and running. If you do want to explore databases in depth, then you're free to take any of the many courses that are offered by WizLabs, and you can spend hours learning about each database and get really deep into it. The first one is native installation. So if for open source databases like MySQL and Postgres, you can just download the package directly from the vendor and set it up yourself on your local machine. For the commercial ones like Oracle and Microsoft SQL Server, they might have different versions, and you may have to purchase a license, but even those you can still set them up locally if you really want to, but only for testing purposes. Now on the cloud, there are three ways of doing this. You can set it up in a virtual machine. You can spin up a virtual machine and set up a Linux or a LAMP. The second method is cloud. So you can set up these databases on virtual machines that you spin up at a cloud provider. So there are two ways here. You can do it in a simple way, or you can do it in a large scale way. A simple way would be like DigitalOcean or some other smaller provider, where you can just get a virtual machine for a lot cheaper, spin it up, and you have a lot more control, and you're essentially just remotely leasing a machine there. The second one is to go for a large scale solution like Google Cloud Platform or AWS, where you have hundreds or thousands of different combinations and setups and integrations and so on. And that might be a little more expensive on the long run, although you can get a free trial and get started really quickly there as well. So the third option is to use a managed service. So you can use Google Cloud Platform or AWS or Microsoft Azure again. In this case, you can spin up a managed MySQL or Postgres or Microsoft SQL Server database management system. And in that case, it's a serverless offering, so you don't have to worry about any of the maintenance or updates or patches and scaling and availability and so on. And you'll be able to pretty much click one button and you're up and running. However, that's going to be a lot more expensive on the long run as well. Now, so far you have set up the RDBMS, and after that, if you want to actually run the SQL queries against your databases, then you'll have to actually connect to them. So you'll need a client. So if you installed the RDBMS locally, then you can directly access the database system and the databases directly. If it's remote, then you'll have to set up the remote access on the cloud side. And then on the local side, you might need a local client that's able to connect to it. In that case, one of the options is to use the cloud proxy, which will allow you to connect as a local host, and then that will just proxy a connection directly to the cloud provider. Now let's install MySQL on a DigitalOcean virtual machine. So we go to DigitalOcean and then create a new droplet. So here we can choose from the marketplace either a LAMP setup or a regular setup, blank setup, or a MySQL admin setup. So in this case, we're choosing 1804 LAMP with MySQL and PHP MyAdmin. And then we can choose the pricing that you want for the VM, press create, and this will create our droplet, which is the virtual machine. Then we can start setting up our MySQL on it. So when you set up the virtual machine here, you will get an email with the username and the password for the root. So then you'll have to go and connect to it by SSH and then change the password. So here you can see the system that's actually being set up. It's a PHP MyAdmin, SQL Server, Apache, PHP, and certbot. The first time you have to change the root password. We can see the PHP myadmin username and password as well. So use that credentials here, password, login. And now we can create our databases here and also click on SQL, and that will run our queries from there. We're now here in our Google Cloud Platform dashboard. Make sure you have your billing set up and you're in the correct project. And now you can set up your databases here. You can go to SQL. And this is Cloud SQL. And you can see different databases that you have here. So you can create instance, and you have a choice of MySQL, Postgres, and SQL Server. So if you're on MySQL, you click on choose MySQL and give the instance name, the root password, and just create, and that will automatically create an instance in this region. So you provide the instance name, the root password, the region, and the database version that you want installed. The connectivity, do you want to privately be able to connect, or you are allowing public IP? So in this case, you can provide explicitly which IP addresses that you want to use to connect to it. And you can just press create and let the defaults be the defaults. Now at the same time, you can press create instance and then create a Postgres instance in a similar way. It's SQL, give a name, give a default user password, region, and the database version you want. And in a similar way, you can choose the connectivity, private or public, and add your networks and press create. Now, in order to connect to these databases remotely, you'll need to use a cloud proxy. So for that, you need to create a service account here. Service accounts, create service account, create a name for the service account, and now you have to provide the permissions. In this case, we'll use SQL Cloud SQL admin, continue, create a key, so create a JSON key. So this will download a file, your key file, to your local machine. And now when you run the cloud proxy, you'll have to provide this in order for the authentication and authorization. Done. And if we go back to our SQL, see if it's already done. So we can see that the instances are being created now. So in the meantime, what we can do is we can download our cloud proxy. So this is the URL where you can find more information for installing the cloud proxy. So depending on the OS you have, Linux, Mac, or Windows, then you'll have to download the cloud proxy. That's the first step. Moving the Cloud SQL proxy to my downloads folder. Now I make sure my Cloud SQL proxy and the JSON file that I just downloaded, they're both in the same folder in this case, because we need to provide the path. You don't have to, but it's easier. So in order to start the Cloud proxy, you need two things. You need the instance string, the instance name and the region and the name of the instance, as well as the credentials file that we just downloaded. So we go back to thing, and we can see that our Postgres here, this is done. So when you click on the overview, you can see connect to this instance, and you can see this instance connection name. So this is the full string. This is just the project ID : region : the name of your Postgres instance. Copy this. and you want to paste this here. So you're doing Cloud SQL proxy instances and then credentials file, and this is the file that we just downloaded. Now you open a terminal window, go to the folder, paste this, and now we have ready for new connections. So when you have a client here, for example, that you want to connect, you click on connect and create a new connection. And in this case, you provide the local host 127.0.0.0.1 and the port 5432. Then you provide your login and your password that you provided in the instance setup. And then you save and you connect. And that will connect your instance. It's exactly the same procedure if you're using MySQL. So in the same way, if we go back here, so now we have a MySQL demo. This is a MySQL database, Postgres and MySQL. Exactly the same procedure. Click on that. And in the overview, you have connect to this instance. And this is the connection string. And the credentials file is the same one that you just downloaded. So if you want to connect to this, it's going to be here. You just replace the instances, this one here, with this connection name, and you'll be able to connect to the MySQL database instance as well. And finally, you can also create a SQL Server instance here. So I'm not going to actually go through this, but again, this is the same managed instance setup, and you give the instance name, password, and you can choose the connectivity if you want to make any changes, or just press create, and this will actually create a Microsoft SQL Server 2017 standard edition, which is actually sort of a big deal because typically you'll have to set this up locally, and that requires a lot of resources and a lot of setup is involved. And you'll be able to use the same cloud proxy that we downloaded and used to connect to MySQL and Postgres even to administer the SQL Server instance.